Can we get some fries for the table?
And we're back. Episode 4. Here we are.
We're putting episode numbers next to this?
We are. So we know what we're doing.
Ah, right.
At least some part of what we're doing.
Continuity.
Continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you ever surprised when you started to get on film and TV sets about how many people work on them?
I had some idea of the number of people involved from looking at the old Star Wars footage.
But you really felt like that before you went and saw the Mammoth productions?
Yeah, no, because I was Star Wars was my jam when I was 13, 14 years old, and they had a lot of behind the scenes photos of when they were filming in Tunisia and stuff like that. So you could see the large number of crew people behind it. And back then they also had a lot of print stories and magazine stories about all the stuff that goes into the special effects. So there again, you're seeing large crews of people working on film sets. It's amazing how many people are employed by.
Yeah. Well, you can tell by the credits
Yeah.
alone how many people are. What's the biggest budget, like the biggest, not budget, but the biggest like set that you've been on?
Oh, nothing big.
No?
Nothing big.
Nothing really?
No.
None of the reality shows or anything like that were big, or did you guys not?
No.
No?
No, nothing huge.
Oh, well.
Nothing huge.
So have you traveled recently?
I have. Just got back from Iceland.
And how was that?
It was excellent. I highly recommend it.
Okay.
And everyone you tell that you went to Iceland, the first thing they say, it's on my bucket list.
Right.
Every single person says, oh, it's on my bucket list.
Sure. It's an expensive
so
bucket list.
It's expensive. It's a very expensive bucket list
Yeah.
trip. So I can see why it's on a lot of people's bucket lists.
Right.
But it's well worth it. It's an incredible country. It's beautiful. It's geography unlike anything you've seen. And it's the scale of it. It's hard to even capture in film. The scope of the landscape and the scale of the landscape, all that volcanic rock everywhere. But it's incredible. And we were there in summer. So, excuse me, it was effectively 24 hours of daylight.
Ah, right.
So you have to take like blinders for sleeping, even though the rooms have all room darkening curtains and everything. But you have to, you do end up having to wear like a eye mask in order to completely black out the room.
Wow. And
It's
how
pretty cool.
many months is that for?
I don't know. I think it's for their entire summer. So starts May, June, go all the way through to September, maybe September. It starts to get darker because then they go down to like about 3 or 4 hours of sunlight total.
And
once
how
they
do
get
you
into the
do at
winter.
this age with jet lag?
Badly.
Yeah.
Very, very badly. Yeah, no, I suffer from jet lag a lot worse than I ever did before. So when I got back, like I was in California a couple of weeks ago, and so I flew in the first day. Second day, post-show, we did a 3-hour drive from Sacramento to San Jose. So that means getting into the hotel in San Jose at like 3 a.m, right? Which is 6 a.m. our
Whose
time.
idea is that? Like, why not just spend the night and go the next day?
That's actually my brother because he likes to sleep through the next day, right? He's not going to get up early to do the 3-hour drive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So just walk
he
for-
likes to get into that hotel room and hunker down,
Oh, okay.
right? Like he gets in there and he will hunker down for a good 12-hour nap until the next day.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah. And
just for context, though.
yeah.
You're talking about a sort of like a West Coast leg to a tour, or?
Yeah, it's part of the tour. But so I flew into Sacramento. We did the 3-hour drive, got to the hotel at 3 a.m. California time, which is 6 a.m. Eastern, right? So going to bed 6 a.m. And then the next night, after the show, I had a lobby call of 3:30 a.m. to get from San Jose to San Francisco to catch a 6:15 a.m. flight back home. So, get back to the hotel around midnight from the show. And again, you get about 2.5, 3 hours of sleep, right? Then you're up on the way to the airport, then sleep on the plane. But those 2 nights wiped me out for literally the whole week.
Oh, yeah.
Like it just completely messed me up.
Yeah. I can't help but try to, like, how do you do business for the next couple of days when you're trying to?
You're foggy.
Yeah.
You're foggy. And as I get older, I'm foggier.
Yeah.
But yeah, the jet lag is just killer for me now. And we build in, so when we travel internationally, we don't just sort of land the day before the show. We build in, depending on how far away it is, we have at least two days of nothingness, which is just like Lost in Translation, just like in the movie.
Yeah.
Where you get into the hotel, maybe you push through You know, that first day when you get there, if you land in the afternoon and you don't go straight to bed, you push through until it's like nighttime, maybe midnight or so, go to bed, and then try and get up at a reasonable hour the next day. But then sometimes you do that and you're just lying in bed wide awake, right? And then you go to sleep at like 5 a.m,
Right.
right? And then you end up sleeping till 2, 3 in the afternoon, and then you're fucked. Your whole sleep cycle is completely fucked after that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's one thing for you to be you. What does it do to perform?
Performer's fine. I mean, he gets through it, right? He knows it's showtime, right?
That's nuts to me. Because
But yeah,
that's
I mean,
all your energy. Like
that's-
you could talk about it with reference to, oh my gosh, I'm not going to sleep. It's another thing to think that, oh my gosh, I'm not going to perform.
Yeah, I mean, he soldiers through. He's good like that. He's very good like that. But for me, I mean, I also have, I've also found in recent years that downtime in a hotel room with nothing to do for your mental health, it's very, very bad. I really struggle with being sort of tucked away in a hotel room. Doesn't matter how nice it is, for an extended period of nothingness, right? So sometimes, you know, the guys will go out, they'll have lunch or something like that, or you'll meet at my brother's room for breakfast at like 4:30 in the afternoon if it's a dead day. But that concept of just lying in bed all day and doing nothing, or just being in the hotel room all day and doing nothing, I find it very, very jarring on my mental health now. It's really a strange kind of thing that's happened in the last few years. That, yeah, I found it quite profound. And then, you know, you not that this is the path I'm going down, but then, you know, you hear a lot about rock stars and musicians and stuff who end their lives in hotel rooms, unfortunately. And a lot of it's happened even recently. And there's a part of me that, again, not to get too dark or too depressive, but I understand some of that psyche that's going into that mental process of just being there. Because for musicians, artists, and things like that, you know, the day is effectively a 2-hour day, right? There's 22 hours of nothing until you get to the gig, right? Or 21 hours of nothing. Then you get to the gig, you do the show, it's 2 hours, 3 hours, meet and greets, whatever, right? Transport back, and that's it. But you've got basically 21 hours to fill until you actually hit the stage. And that time is really quiet.
Right.
Like it's really, really quiet, especially as you get older.
Yeah.
You know, if you're young and, you know, like you're one of the hippity hoppers and you know, you've got women and all that kind of stuff happening. Maybe, you know, you're drinking, smoking, whatever it is. And you're leading that rock and roll kind of party lifestyle. That's fine. But at this age, it's really, really subdued and quiet. So we've got a lot of people who say, hey, you know what? We'd like to follow you guys on tour.
Yeah.
Right? And we get that all the time. So we actually did the documentary of us on tour.
Yeah.
And it was fine, right? But, you know, if you were to do it now, it's just middle-aged men
Yeah.
sleeping, waking up, having fairly mundane breakfasts, you know, nothing overly exotic. Just a bunch of guys. If there's so many pictures of nice, beautiful hotel suites around the world, you know, Melbourne, Sydney, Bombay, Madras, wherever it is, Singapore, massive hotel suites. And you look around and it's like, you know, 6 bald guys all staring at their phones in a circle, right? And that's it. But it's not as rock and roll as people think it is. It is and it isn't.
Yeah.
Right? So you get to the venue, you're treated like kings. You know, you've got the chauffeurs, the cars, the security. You know, sometimes you get police escorts and things like that. But a lot of it is just very, very quiet downtime that people don't see. And I think a lot of younger dudes, you know, think it should be, you know, bottle service and popping off. And, you know, even when we've posted pictures of ourselves on boat charters or yacht charters in Dubai or South Africa or Singapore or something like that, you know, guys will comment like, oh, it's nothing but dudes. Right. Because they think they've got this music video idea of how it should be.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just not that.
Right.
Right. And,
I remember.
And that's empty and it's vacuous. Like there's nothing to that. If you have like a bunch of local bimbos on a boat, right? There's nothing to that. Like, well, what is that?
Right.
You know, and I'm married, so it's like I really don't care.
Yeah. And what are you trying to prove to who?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're doing it for the gram, but even then, if you're doing it for the gram, you look like an idiot, especially at this age.
Yeah. I remember asking you when we were talking about doing this podcast, I was like, well, why don't we do it on the road? It seems like that's where all the stories happen. And you were like, no, it's really not. I really don't have that energy about the road life that would permit like a good podcast to be done.
Yeah.
And I thought about it after and I was like, oh yeah, it's, you know, I've hung out with your brother on the road, I'd say maybe a dozen times in different stages of his career. You know what I mean? Either being in the same city or happen to running into him, et cetera, et cetera. And they've been very different depending on the time of the career, right? Like the Montreal Comedy Nest days are very different than playing, the bigger stadiums. And
early days for him, especially, it was very, it was full on self-indulgence and things like that. And so be it. But, like I said, we're just a bunch of old dudes now. So,
actually, one of your old security guys who works,
our security guys are old. Yeah.
The Weekend, what's his name? Oh my gosh, I'm totally drawing a blank right now.
Works with The Weekend?
Yes, used to work with The Weekend. Oh my gosh, was wearing the big hat behind me in the picture.
Ray?
Ray
Worked with The Weekend?
Yeah.
Did he? Okay. Hey, Ray. Oh, I'm Ray. He'll know what that is. Yeah.
So that whole crew, from scratch on, has been pretty much your day ones, right? Like you guys have all kind of traveled together around the world. I know there have been some names that have changed and you've lost some, unfortunately.
Yeah, we lost some people along the way. But yeah, Scratch was there when we first did our first, was he on the first ACC show? I don't think he was, actually. Or was he on the second one? No, he was there. He was there because he was hyping up the crowd. Yeah. What's your favorite movie?
I don't have a favorite movie. I've been asked that by every single person.
By better people than me.
Better people than you.
Yeah.
More accomplished people. Princess Leia asked me that question.
Did she really?
Yeah.
That's neat. Gold bikini.
I really liked her, Carrie Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
Are you allowed to name?
Well, everyone knows who Princess Leia was. Yeah.
She was really nice. The time I spent with her.
She wasn't that much older than me. That freaks me out. Like when she died and they gave her age, I'm like, oh, she's not really that much older. She was really young.
She was.
She was really, really young.
Yeah, she was. And she was extremely talented too. And not many people realize that as a live performer, she was extremely funny. Have you ever met Martin Short?
I have.
Yeah.
A couple of times.
He's a really nice guy. He's pretty much the same person as you see. He doesn't really break character out of
Yeah, no, he's pretty consistent. I sat beside him. I worked with him the night before at Gilda's Club. I met him. And then the next day I was flying to LA and he was sitting beside me on the plane. And that was pretty cool.
What is Gilda's Club?
It's a cancer charity, hospice, kids, people, cancer thing.
And
really selling it.
You lend your support that way?
We did. We had people we were in business with who were affiliated with us and asked us to help them with it. But we kind of drifted away from it.
And this is based on Gilda Radner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's her charity, or it's a charity that her friends put together around her because she had cancer. And they built this house place where they help people with cancer. That's all I got. Didn't really pay that much attention, obviously.
No, but you guys you would come back every year for it.
Yeah.
And
but we had, I mean, in all honesty, we had no great spiritual connection to it. And also, but we did have the connection because our dad died of cancer. So they kind of pulled us in that way as well. But we helped them. We supported them. They made money and to continue the charity, but kind of drifted away from it.
What is the last comedy special you watched that you actually liked?
Oh, John Mulaney. Little Baby
you like
J.
his latest Netflix one?
Yeah. I didn't like his other stuff before that. I didn't care for it. But Little Baby J is fantastic.
Really?
Did you watch it?
I watched, I'd say, about 30 minutes of it.
Is it Little Baby J?
Right around past the intervention part. I don't remember where I stopped. I stopped because eventually it was like, this is very name droppy.
No, but it was good. It was good name droppy. It was because it was true. What I liked about it was all true,
right?
And it was organic. It wasn't contrived. It was actual events surrounding his drug use, and
it felt a little bit like first world problems after a while.
Sure, but I still liked it, and I like the fact that he owns up to it. That people always say to him, like, you don't look like a guy who was a drug addict,
right?
And that's what he's putting all his energy into, not looking like a guy who was a drug addict. He's like, okay, good, so it's working.
Yeah.
Can we check? Is it Little Baby J, or I can't remember if it was.
Oh, I'm sure
John
there's
Mulaney.
a way to cut around.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I really like that. I don't like a lot of comedy specials these days. I need to check out Tom Segura's and I need to check out Bert's Bert Kreischer, because I love those guys.
Yeah.
Huge fan. But wait a sec. We got to come back to your movie thing. You skirted around it.
Yeah.
Mohit's movies. You're known
Yes.
for movies. You
I
love
was,
movies,
yes.
movies. You want to be an
Movies, yes.
actor. Movies. I know you're Bollywood, but mainstream movie. There must be something that you
making up
gravitate
shit now.
towards.
Yeah.
Something that you really liked. Something that influenced you. Something you saw and said, I love movies.
Just Baby J.
Just Baby J. Not Little Baby J. Just Baby J. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
I don't have a prolific answer to my affinity towards movies.
There must be some favorite movies that you've liked over the years. Citizen Kane, Casablanca,
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. You have the poster.
Yes, I do. Every film, here's the worst part. That was the worst part about me as a critic, was that I can find redeeming quality about everything.
So you suspend disbelief. You're a big, when you watch a movie, you can suspend disbelief.
Yes.
Yeah, I can do the same. Yeah.
We talked about Bollywood in one of the episodes. You have to suspend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there must be some movies where you're like, oh, I love that movie.
One of the things that was a byproduct of the volume of movies that I've seen is that I truly became numb to watching movies. Like, I can follow the structure of the script from the opening scene right to the end and still not know anything that I just watched. I'll get lost in how something was done in post-production and not tell you anything about the film as a result. I cannot watch movies the same as people.
You said that to me before.
And I'm trying so hard to fall in love with movies again. I went and watched Tom Cruise's latest film, and I watched it in Screen X. Have you heard about Screen X?
No.
So Screen X is this sort of like non-glasses 3D immersive.
Where is this?
Normal movie theaters have it now. It's being experimented, rolled out.
Where did you see it?
I saw it at Queensway, Mississauga, Ontario, Canada.
You can name where you saw it. It's not like this- people have Google. They can. Yeah. So you
It's
saw it
fairly
at
new
Queensway. You saw it at Queensway.
I saw it at Queensway.
Okay.
Not Sherway. Remember
Okay.
when Sherway had the...
Sherway was my spot. That was my jam. That was my theater.
Love that place.
Sherway was my
And
theater.
it had Chi-Chi's and Olive Garden there. You remember that in that little parking lot?
I don't remember Chi-Chi's.
No, the Mexican
No.
restaurant.
I always remember Red Lobster there, though.
Yeah, the Red Lobster was still there.
And Jack Astor's. I go to Jack Astor's or Red Lobster before or after the movie.
None of those guys are going to sponsor us.
Yeah, that's all right.
Chi-Chi's won't because
That's
they've
all
been
right.
out of
And neither
business.
will the theater at Sherway Gardens because it's not there anymore.
not there
But
anymore.
that was my favorite theater.
Right. So after Vietnam, I was like,
So no
I should-
way. So wait. You saw it in this immersive screen thing?
Yeah, Screen X. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is going to get me back into movies the way that I really want to get into movies. And instead, it just made me think, oh, this is a really high price ticket to pay for something that's half decent. And it was quite immersive because it was Mission Impossible, jumping out of planes, and you feel it, the Dolby, the Atmos, all of that.
Really?
But I can't watch movies the same way as people. It's almost like, I guess, a music critic that goes to concerts every night. I just can't. I was around during the birth of the Avengers. Like, I was there when...
You make it sound like you were the only one. Like
No,
this was like
what I'm saying is
1912.
what I'm saying is that...
Or you were in New York with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and coming up with, I was there, Excelsior on,
Actually, I have more history of saying a film's going to be crap that ended up being good
Okay.
than I actually have. I've heard pitches from directors and stuff and gone on to say that's horrible, and they've gone on to win awards and shit. So
Which one?
I'll tell you that story in a second. So what I'm saying is that when the Avengers would still have to go and promote the movie,
Yeah.
right? Like it wasn't that going to be that big and things. And I would still just watch them and go, oh, I can see what's going to happen. I see this. And in some cases, I just kind of drift off because you know what's going to happen in the movie and how it happens. And until you hear the gunshot, you don't really have to think about it. And it's unfortunate. Like, this is an ideal place for me to do my movie podcast. I've been asked by actual sponsors to do some form of a film related podcast. I can't fake the passion about it. Right now, I'm mostly interested in the movie business as a result of innovation. I can't wait to see what our kids make in the future with reference to movies. I don't really care about what's in movie theaters now.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't care about the latest IMAX version of X, Y, and Z that's out. I'm more interested in how 40 IMAX films are going to be made on a topic.
I had a similar experience after we made Indian Detective, and it didn't go to a second season. And the amount of work that we put into that thing, and the passion for it, and then after it didn't go, I was so put off movies and television that I literally just checked out, just the same way you have, that it's still hard for me to commit to a lot of TV shows. And then when the streaming services started, putting up new series and things like that, and then dropping them after one season, right? That also made me very skeptical of latching on. So, it's like the Ted Lasso thing we were talking about. Like, you didn't watch Ted Lasso consciously. And I didn't watch Ted Lasso consciously in the first season because I wasn't sure where it was going to go. And it's this emotional attachment. So I'm trying to protect my feelings in a way of getting too attached to like a TV series or something like that. But after Indian Detective didn't go, I was so sort of scarred and jaded that I just couldn't get down with any other TV shows or movies or anything like that, or even Netflix, because they are the ones that they got really pissed off when they broadcast it, because they thought that show was going to help them. It was going to help be their foray into India, right? Because at that time, India was the big prize for the streamers, both
Right.
Amazon and Netflix, and they were both competing heavily to capture that market. And when we made Indian Detective, it was very, very Canadian. It was consciously and specifically Canadian. It wasn't made for India. It was made for Canada, and it looks Canadian. It is Canadian. It's about Canadians. It's about Canada, and it's about India. And they were actually really pissed off that it didn't do anything in India. And we told them, I said, we didn't make it for India. And the critics in India were really harsh on it. I mean, when I started to read reviews of it, I then started to look up the reviewer to see what their bona fides were. And a lot of them were sort of Indian cultural elites, right, who were very critical of it. And their criticism was, oh, yeah, they show slums. Oh, yeah, they show police corruption. Oh, yeah, they show poor people. But they missed the complete point of it, which was that, the main character was, Doug DeMello was my brother's character. And, he was a cop in Toronto. His father was a pilot. The girl he falls in love with is a lawyer, right, who works pro bono in the slums. Her parents were doctors. They missed all of that, and they just decided to focus in on what they perceived as being sort of stereotypes of India, which is the corruption and the slums and the poverty and stuff like that. And then I was talking to another Indian friend of mine, and he's like, oh, you know what? You should have just made it about rich Indian people. And this guy was a rich Indian guy. I said, because you just want to see yourself reflected back. Well, he goes, no, it's about aspirational. I said, but what could be more aspirational than being a doctor, a lawyer, a pilot, pro bono, helping poor people? And when you looked at the criticism that, that was one of the big ones levied against it. Also, legitimately, they were concerned about the quality of the Hindi and the Indian accents that were used, because we filmed a lot of it. We filmed most of it in South Africa. So we had consultants on set, but they were also South African Indian.
Yeah.
So they heard Hindi, processed
yeah.
differently. So when you're in Mumbai or something like that and you hear it, it's jarring. Right. Just as when, you're watching a movie, and we grew up with Jamaicans, and they have an American doing
Hey,
a Jamaican.
man.
Yeah, they have an American doing a Jamaican accent. You're like, oh, make it stop.
Yeah,
Make
yeah.
it stop. So that was a legitimate criticism and I didn't dispute that at all. But that whole experience put me off watching TV and movies and series and things like that for quite a while.
Yeah, I could see how. I mean, you've developed characters, you've put the hard work in, you got to your season. Think about how many pilots never get seen, and think about how many, people go to those first 3 episodes and get dropped right away.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing about the industry not a lot of people 100% understand. So maybe for a context, just very quickly, Indian Detective is a show, right?
Yeah.
That you executive produced?
Yeah.
Okay. And so originally it was something that you developed for how long?
Oh, years. It takes years to make something like that. And Indian Detective
It's a series.
is a series, but it was also that was the working title. We couldn't think of what to call the show. I said, well, let's just call it the Indian Detective. One of the titles we kicked around when we were talking was the Brown Dick, because as some of you may know, detective's nickname is a dick,
Brown.
right? So
Oh,
we were
Dick,
going to call it the Brown Dick.
Right.
But we ended up using the Indian Detective as the title as a working title. And it
You
just
mean the
kinda
brown dick was taken?
The brown dick was taken. Well, they didn't want to go with that, but so we that was the working title, and it ended up being the actual title of the show. We couldn't come up with anything better than that.
Okay.
It's far from perfect, but it was a lot of time and effort went into that thing, and people who love it really love it, and people who hate it really hate it.
Yeah, but let's get back to the process. So process ends up killing you as a result, right? Like you're just like, I have faith in this. I know what it takes to get to this, etc. And making
movies and television is really, really hard. It is a lot of work. People
why
don't
do you
realize.
think it is though? Like,
I don't understand. I actually don't understand why people do it. When I meet people who are producers now, we want to make this show, we want to make this movie. I'm like, why? It is so much work. It is so much work and so much collaboration. Collaboration, as you know, doesn't come naturally to me. I'm an isolationist. I like to work alone. But the amount of collaboration, the amount of meetings and talking and the mundane things that you end up discussing, it's almost embarrassing. Like the name of the character, the occupation of a character. We can't call him this. We got to call him that. And, we've been through it even in sitcom development, where we were working with NBC. And so the comedy sitcom development team, at that time, they're like, the main character was a writer. No, we don't like writers this year. Let's make him a teacher. Okay, we'll make him a teacher. And, he lives in the Valley. We don't like the Valley right now. Let's make it Cleveland, and all these little kind of weird little things that they throw into the mix because that's just where their heads are at. Right. So you can kind of go along with them. At some point we push back against so much stuff over the years. So at some point you're just like, okay, fine. He's this. Oh, okay, fine. It's in Cleveland. Okay, fine. It's that. And you do all of that. You submit the script, you submit the treatment, and then there's a regime change. The entire comedy development team is fired and replaced by a new head of development and a new development team. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't like that anymore. We don't like Cleveland anymore. We would prefer if it took place in the Valley. And we're like, well, it's supposed to be in the Valley, right? And we'd prefer if he was a writer. Well, he was a writer, but your guys changed it. And like, yeah, no, we're not feeling this show at all.
Oh, wow.
And you that's a year that you'll spend developing that with people.
Have you ever heard about a show that gets its life again after it's been canceled?
Yeah, that has happened, hasn't it? I can't think of what shows it was offhand. Arrested Development was one.
Yeah, that was the only one I could think of off the top of my head.
And that was an impossible thing to make. And if you watch it, and I've seen deconstructions of it, the issues that they had were getting all the cast together because everyone had moved on to doing other shows.
Much different shows.
So if they had something with Jason Bateman, and they were only able to get Will Arnett and Jason Bateman, then that was the scene that they shot because they wouldn't have any of the actors available at that time. So they could only they had to shoot in these really weird blocks to make the series. Right. And it was really, really clunky. And in some episodes, they actually use like body doubles and things like that from the back that's Jason Bateman walking away from the camera, but it's actually just a body double. So they had a hell of a time trying to make that.
Okay, so where then do you lie in the executive producing world? Right now, you don't?
No, I got a couple of things on the go. But again, it's not a process I like. And I make it clear to people, I said, I hate producing. I really, really hate producing.
Do you just hate producing in Canada or do you hate producing?
No, just in general. It doesn't come... I've been told I think like a producer, but at the same time, I don't like the process. And one of the issues that I have as a producer or as an executive producer is I really treat it like a business. So I'm not sort of warm and cuddly with the writers, right? I'm not sort of stroking egos and like, oh, so fantastic. And I'm not genteel with them. I treat them like an employee. Okay. I treat them like, well, you're doing a job and this isn't good enough. This needs to be fixed. Right. And I'm quite blunt and to the point, and it doesn't go over very well. Because I treat it like, listen, we're trying to build this company. We're trying to build this business. And what you're giving me is subpar and it needs to be fixed. And so that's always been a problem for me within the producing creative world, is even though I am a creative person and I think creatively, but I'm at the same time interacting with people in such a way that I'm a little bit too candid and a little bit too frank and a little bit too honest. And this is not an industry that appreciates candor or honesty. It's an industry where nobody really always says what they mean. The one phrase that somebody told me was, with regards to if you're on a TV show and you don't get invited back, they'll never tell you why you weren't invited back. You just won't be invited back. They'll never tell you why you weren't given that opportunity. It just will not happen. So one of the things that I'm working on as a person, as part of my growth, if you will, is being less frank and less abrasive in this world of producing.
I don't get what's the point of that, though.
Because everyone gets so sensitive. You're dealing with some very, very sensitive people, very sensitive egos, very delicate egos. It comes back to that discussion we had a while back about imposter syndrome. It comes back to, artistic integrity and all that kind of thing. And I'm just sort of calling stuff out, and people are like, well, you can't say that, right? You can't just do that. You have to manipulate it. There's a lot of manipulation involved, and it's just not straightforward. It's not clean.
It's so funny though, because you talk about treating it like a business, and if it was widgets that you were selling, the accountability would be through the roof. The people don't do the job, they get fired. Yeah. So the one thing that drives me nuts about the entertainment industry in general is that there's competent people like yourself that have the ability to execute, but it traditionally is littered with people that don't really give a fuck about what they're doing.
One of the things that you end up having to really analyze when you're a producer, executive producer, or working in this collaborative environment is you have to look at what each person's objective is within this structure of putting a TV show or a movie together, because everyone has their own agenda. Right. So sometimes when we're developing things, people are like, well, this will be really good for you guys. And I'm like, no, it's actually really good for the writer, because if the show goes, they are going to get this credit. They're going to move up a level on the food chain.
Right.
And you as a production company, you will now go from being this production company to that production company. So you're going to take a step up on the food chain. But in terms of real risk exposure outside of the financial risk exposure, that exposure is actually all on us.
Right.
Or the artist, or my brother. The talent. Because at the end of the day, if the show is not a success or it's not done well, no one's going to say, oh, your writing really sucked, or your producing really sucked, or that really sucked, or set design. No, they're going to just say to you as the lead person, as the artist, or as the executive producer with your name attached to it, and say, how did you make that? That was really bad. And you can't sit there and spin it and say, well, that was not good. That was not good. They're like, but you were there, weren't you?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say something?
Yeah.
Right. So, but when when you do say something, it's this massive battle with all of these people, with all of their agendas, with all of their points of view. And now we're dealing with, the biggest battle is, not the biggest, but one of the battles that we're fighting is wokeism. Right. We're dealing with wokeism in every facet of everything that we do. And that's a major, major problem, because now you're not just dealing with the agendas of the people that you're working with. You're now dealing with the agendas of networks and studios, all of whom are subscribing to this new sort of mentality that's out there.
But you said it yourself. That's a shift regime away from being different.
Yes, but unfortunately, all of these entities have relinquished their power to this woke mob, who is now directing the politics of what they're doing as a broadcaster, production company, studio. And that's what you see in most TV shows now, where they're trying to, they pigeonhole in, they basically do the Noah's Ark of ethnicities and genders and sexual orientations. They basically, you can watch every show now, and it's like black guy, Indian guy, Chinese, Asian, right? Gay, yes. Trans, yes. This, that, everything else. Checklist. And I know of certain broadcasters here in this country who literally will walk around a production set with a checklist.
As an audit?
As an audit. as an on-site audit.
Wow.
Right? Of like, oh yeah, there's Mohit's brown guy. Okay, we got him. Right? So-and-so's this, so-and-so's that. And they are, and that's brutal. And that's really, if you think about it, and it sounds extreme, but it really is quite fascist, that is the direction that they're going, because that's like, again, extreme analogy, but it's like the Nazi Germany sort of scenario where it's like, okay, oh, what? You're what? Okay, let me make a note of that. You're Jewish, you're gypsy, you're gay, you're what? It's a mindset and a philosophy that is really going to kill this business. And it comes from a place of inclusiveness and representation and diversity, and I'm all for that. But
it's being done wrong.
It's being done completely wrong, and it's being jammed down the public's throat, right? The public is not, it's not like the public is rejecting outright a lot of these TV shows and programs because they're just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, so this is where I think the disconnect is. I don't think the public actually cares as much as the people within the industry think. And so what ends up happening is, whether it's wokeism or it's a serving a niche, you end up with a lot of bullshit on TV in general that doesn't serve any audience well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know a heavy community into a particular type of programming just because it features trans people, just because it features a gay couple and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Instead, quality is quality, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good content is good content. HBO shows are a prime example of that.
HBO is a gold standard.
Right. And in many cases, you'll read a description of what a show's about and you'll think, why would I ever watch this? Mm-hmm. You end up watching it. You're like, yeah, I like Wizards. I like this now, whatever the case is. I think the bigger problem, in my opinion, is the more I talk to people within the industry, they're the only people that care enough to have this point of view. Outside of it, it's people wanting to know whether they should cancel their subscription or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Whether the third season is worth it or not. It's never about the 4 shows that are coming up that are going to fill my woke cup, or about making sure I don't want to subscribe to anything because there's more brown people on the network.
That's right.
And I'm a peripheral of the business. So, but when I talk to my brothers, I talk to people outside of it, etc., they don't have this viewpoint about any of it. They think that, in fact, it's more people within the industry butting heads with each other to try to figure it out than anybody caring otherwise.
They're trying to show their bona fides. They're trying to show their social justice warrior, that they are, with what's happening with it, right? But we as consumers, we're not interested in that. And I'll pay attention. I'll notice if I watch a show, whether there's X number of brown people or not. Okay, so I will notice that. Okay, right. But it doesn't mean make me watch the show more or less. Not necessarily. Okay, like the thing about, again, Ted Lasso is, the third or fourth lead is an Indian guy. Right. And he's got a story arc from episode 1 all the way to the final episode. He is the arc of that show.
Right. I saw him in the award season.
And that was really interesting because that had not been portrayed before in that way. And that character was based, the character's mother was Indian and the father was a Jamaican, but from Britain. Right. And that was really interesting to me. That was new and that was unique. And that's pretty cool because I have not seen that character before. Right. And it wasn't done in a tick the box kind of way. It felt organic.
Yeah, especially there. Right.
It really felt organic. And that, I got to give them kudos for that because that was really, really well done. I hadn't seen that character before.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, right? We could probably go down a rabbit hole where certain characters have ended up meaning so much more than they are in the actual fact just because of that representation thing. But I think as we go down the rabbit hole, it'll be even more interesting to hear about the people that you've met along the way that you realize that, oh, if it wasn't for us and the work that we were doing, person probably would have never had an opportunity.
Yeah, we've met those people along the way. Yeah. We've met a lot of those people along the way.
To me, man. Even though it seems a little bit self-indulgent, you got to remember that that's shape-shifting in an industry as well, rather than just like, oh, that's cool, that person has this connection with me.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to come at it from that perspective, to say that if we didn't do what we did, or if my brother didn't do what he did, that person wouldn't exist. But we do know that. It's just a hard thing to sort of articulate and say, hey, man, if it wasn't for us, that guy doesn't exist. That's a weird kind of mentality.
You know what, though?
You know it, but you don't know. You don't say it.
Isolate that clip and just make that. Clayton, like you've never seen him before.
Yeah.
You know what? If it wasn't for us, none of these suckers would be here.
There's quite a few.
It is. You know what? And respectfully, a lot of the conversations you and I end up having are as a result of I can do that lineage sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Where I've talked to the comic before and they don't know, you guys personally, or I've seen people do their routine, and you can see the homage paid, and stuff like that. But I also know that because nobody did you guys any favors, that there's no massive sort of like each one teach one mentality. There's no, we got to constantly look out for the boy, et cetera, et cetera. And who cares? I mean, that's not something you're responsible for doing anyway.
Yeah, no, but we have along the way.
Sure.
We've picked up a lot of people along the way that we've helped out. Yeah. There's people that we respond to and it's like, oh yeah, that guy's really cool. That guy's really good. And then there's people who kind of pretend that we never existed, right? There's people who are like, oh yeah, I know, I'm familiar with you. And I think, outside of the ethnic part of the comedy thing, I think we talked about, the Vancouver actors and stuff like that who just don't mess with my brother at all. I think Seth Rogen, I think I may have told this, but he met my brother at the Sony lot once and he's like, oh, you're Canadian, right? And I was kind of like, really, dude? Really? Yeah, that's it. Like, you're Canadian, right? Like, it's like, come on.
He was probably high.
Probably, and I'm a big Seth Rogen fan. That's
I like Seth Rogen too.
That's the really stupid part. No, I didn't read his book, but I am a stupid fan of Seth Rogen. That's the part that bugs me.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
You don't seem like he would be. But speaking of Canadians that you wouldn't be fans of, I think we're done with this episode, right?
Wait, before we go.
We're not changing the name of this podcast.
Well, no, you didn't want to call it this. Can we just address that for a second?
Yeah, I didn't.
Why was that?
Because A, there's no fries.
Okay.
B, I felt like it implied that it was about food and indulgence, and we didn't even know what we were talking about.
But then you wanted to call it For the Table, which to me spoke directly to a food or cooking show. Because I hear For the Table, and I'm like, oh, this must be about cooking.
No, what I said was For the Table. So when we invite other people, they come to the table with their stories, etc. And you were like, no, we should get fries for the table because when they are in the table, everybody.
That's not what I said. That is absolutely not what I said.
Mo, you should go on tour yourself. You're the funniest guy. And I'm like, dude, that's
also
not even
never
true.
even left
so why
my
would
lips.
you even say that? And then you were like, we'll talk about like a real solid career for you once the podcast takes off.
I'll have what he's having. No, it was fries for the table because when we'd get together, I would order fries for the table.
So many deals coming my way that why would I do things?
I know. I'm not even sure why you're here right now.
I have AI that could do this for me. And soon I'm just going to send that. But you know what? If we get to episode 5, we should do this again.
We should.
At least part of the conversation.
Yes.
The one that's funny or at least listenable.
See you next week.
Can we get some fries for the table?